Sticking with the theme of downloading things, now that we've gone over how to download and load packages, I'm going to talk about how to get data into R. So some of the data we're going to be using already comes with R when you download it. It's a package that automatically comes with R, and it's just called the R datasets package. You can see I've looked it up in the help viewer over here. And it doesn't list many details about it down here, but it says that for a complete list of datasets, I can use this line. So I've written it over here, and if I run this, then all this information about the R datasets package shows up. And these are all of the datasets that we have at our disposal to use. So we're going to be using a couple specific ones, but these are great if you want to go and explore on your own, but you don't really have an idea of what data to use. So I've looked through them, and these are the 4 that I've chosen that we're going to work with. One is called Volcano, Prostitutes, Hair, Eye Color, and Titanic. And I'm going to really briefly show you what all these look like by viewing them. So here's Volcano. So this is actually topographical information, and we're going to use that to make some really cool looking graphs. These numbers denote elevation. So this is one way a matrix is useful for having grids of numbers like this. Actually, I've just realized that this one is not in the R datasets package. It's in a different thing. I'm going to show you that in a second, but I'll show you the other 2 now. So this one, if we view hair, eye color, this just is a bunch of random, about 32 rows of hair colors, eye colors, what sex the person is, and how many times you see that occur within a certain number of people. And if we want to look at exactly what that is, we can go in here. Say we want hair, eye color, and it's right here, and it's the hair and eye color of statistics students. So it's just a random sampling of people, clearly from a statistics class. And then the last data set in the R dataset package we're going to use is Titanic. And this, if we look in here, we can find Titanic is the survival of passengers on the Titanic. So we've got what class they were in, their sex, their age, whether they survived or not, and how frequently we saw that occur. So I'm just going to close all those and go over the next way we're going to get data. Now this data set is not in the base R datasets. That is in a package that we downloaded earlier called HistData, and this is just even more data that we can use. So if I look up HistData, once I've downloaded it in here, then we can see exactly what it is. It's data sets from the history of statistics and data visualization. So it's got a whole bunch more data frames than we already have automatically. So this says the HistData package provides a collection of data sets that are interesting and important in the history of statistics and data visualization. So a whole bunch of free data, which is pretty cool. And if you scroll down, you can see all the different sets available to us. So we've got a bunch of data frames that have been historically important, which is pretty cool. The one that we're going to use is called Prostitutes, because I thought that was a fun one. And some of the others are a little bit boring. So if I say view Prostitutes, we can look at this data frame, and it's between the years 1812 and 1854, and it's how many prostitutes there were in every month in Paris. The count is the number of prostitutes, so I thought that would be kind of fun to look at later on when we're graphing stuff. The last thing we're going to go over is downloading data from the outside, so data that isn't included in any packages. Say you have an Excel file or something and you want to download it. I'm going to explain how to do that. As an example, I've made an Excel file with just some random data that I've made up. And to get this data into R, first we need to save it not as an Excel file, but as a comma-separated values file. And I'll show you what that is. I'm going to go to File, Save As. And I have a folder for all of my R files here. And I'm going to save it, and I'm going to give it a kind of long name, and you'll see the reason why later. I'm going to call it Book Data 2015 for People, Fiction and Non-Fiction. But instead of just hitting save, I'm going to go down here to the format, and you can see that it's going to save it as an Excel workbook, unless I change it. I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to choose comma separated values, or .csv. And what that does, and you can see the description down here, it exports the data on the active sheet to a text file that uses commas to separate values and cells. So when you save an Excel file normally, it's not just saving your data, it's also saving a lot of formatting that goes into an Excel spreadsheet. When we save it as a comma-separated values file, what it does is it takes just the data from the Excel sheet, and basically you can open it in any text editor you want. And all it is just all the numbers with commas in between them. So it's a much simpler file type. And we're going to save this. And it's going to give you this warning message, but that's exactly what you want it to do. It will contains features that will not work or may be removed if you save it as a CSV. That's all the formatting that we don't need and don't want. So we're going to just click OK. And just to show you what this looks like, if I open this, it will open it in Excel and it will be fine. But I'm going to open it with a text editor, and I'm going to show you what it looks like this way. So this is what it looks like when you save a comma-separated value. See, instead of putting it in a grid like it does in an Excel file, all it has is the top row separated by commas, the second row separated by commas, third row, etc. So that's what it does. And this form is what R is able to read. So we're going to go back to R, and now we've got our comma-separated values file all ready to go. And with RStudio, it's super easy to import data into your environment. So you're just going to go into your environment box up here and click Import Dataset from Text File. And you'll find your folder where you've saved it. You're going to click on that and open it. And the one thing here that's really important is this selection here, the heading selection. Now it says yes, but sometimes it'll say no. And if you have a data frame like we do here, where the top row is the labels of the names, we're always going to want to click yes. So that labels the first row as the column names. And you can see it down here when that row is bolded, that means it's correct. But if you click no, it's just going to make up random variables for your column titles, and then you won't be able to use these to sort or do anything. So we want to click yes. A situation where you might not want to click yes is if we have more like matrix values in Excel, so we just have a whole bunch of numbers or a whole bunch of data without a column title. In that case, we won't want a heading. So we're going to click yes, we want heading. And here's where you can actually change the name up here, which is super useful, but we're going to leave it like that. So that's one option. You can just go in and say, oh, I only want it to be called book data, and the name is what you're going to type in order to call up that data in R. But we're going to change the name in our code itself. So we're going to say import, and it's going to show us in R what it is, and then it's also going to put it in our environment. So you might notice that the column title changed a little bit. Total books used to have a space between it, but now it just has a period. And that's because we can't have spaces in the titles of our columns. So it just automatically gets rid of them and puts in a period. Sometimes when you import data, it's going to have that long title, and you can mouse over and see what it's called. But we're going to change the name. So we're going to say, all right, I want to change, and I just press tab to put that whole thing in there. I don't want that. I don't want to have to type that whole thing out every time I want to call up the data set. So I'm just going to kind of call it book data, and we're going to save it. And if I run this, now these two are the exact same thing, but this one is a whole lot easier to write. So now that we've saved it into a new variable, it's easier to call up. We don't really need this to be in our environment anymore. So we're going to use the rm function, which we went over at the very beginning, but you might not remember. And we're going to say remove this from our environment. And now all we've got left is something called book data, and we're set to go with that data frame. Now we've gone over how to get data from R's automatic data frames, how to get it from packages that we download ourselves, and how to import our own Excel files into R and convert them into the proper format. Lastly, we're going to download some data from online that's actual data, free to the public, and it's pretty cool. To do this, we're going to go to volcano.si.edu. And this is the Smithsonian's Global Volcanism Program. So this is really cool. You can read through this website if you'd like. They're monitoring volcanoes, and it's really handy because if you go to this database drop down, they have a spreadsheet freely available of the last 10,000 years of volcanic activity, basically. So we're going to go to this website and we're going to click on this, and it'll automatically start downloading as an Excel file, and it's going to be called GVP Volcano List. So we're going to save this onto our computer. And now we're going to go back to Excel, see that this is here, and we're going to open it up. Now we're not going to be using this data set right away because it's pretty huge. We're going to learn a couple more ways to deal with data first, but I wanted to just download it now anyway. So this is a huge data frame with hundreds of lines. We've got all the names of volcanoes, what country they're in, region, and the elevation of the volcano, and what type of rock it was. So we're going to be using this later on. Before I save this, we're going to have to delete the first row, because when we download it into R, if you remember, we're allowed to say that the column name was at the top, but this actually has 2 rows of column names, so we need to get rid of that first one so that R can name the second row as the column names. So you're just going to select the first row by using this little arrow that shows up when you mouse over the number 1, and we're going to delete that whole row. And now we're ready to go. So now we're going to say File, Save As. I'm going to call it CSV Volcano List just to change the name a little bit. Choose comma separated values and save. And press continue. And now we're going to go back to R. We're going to say import dataset again from text file, and we're going to choose the CSV Volcano List. Now you can see we've got this whole row as row names, which is exactly what we want. Headings, yes. And I'm going to change the name up in here. So I'm going to call this Volcano Data. And you shouldn't just call it Volcano, because actually we're going to use a different data set called Volcano later on that automatically comes with R. So we should name it something different just so we can tell them apart. So this is going to be Volcano Data. I'm going to import it. And now it's all in R. And you don't have to worry, you might notice it only displays 1,000 rows in the viewer here, but you can see at the bottom it says displayed 1,000 rows of 1,556, and it shows that 556 just aren't visible because R doesn't want to print the whole thing because it's pretty huge. So now we have all of our data ready, and we can move on to looking more in depth at each of these data frames and doing some really cool graphs.